Stop closing deals and start helping people decide.
In order to get more sales, you have to lower the importance on sales.
I really just enjoyed the process of helping people make decisions. And it's very possible that some salespeople will never have that shift.
So is that unique for each person that's in front of you? Because are their obstacles different, or is there a universal, this is the next obstacle somebody goes through?
The first major decision obviously they have to make is, hey, and welcome to the Jason Forrest Show. Today I'm with my wife, Mary Forrest, and we're talking about this topic that everyone wants to know. Stop closing deals and start helping people decide. One of the things that we know is that the top 1%, they actually lower the importance on focusing on getting a deal done, and they spend way more time focusing on helping people make decisions. So Mary, this is a big topic, and this is one of probably the biggest things that separates, in my opinion, a top 1%er from kind of an average person is, again, those top 1% people, through their kind of sales wisdom, they get to a point where they say, you know what, in order for me to get a close, in order for me to close someone, I need to, again, lower the importance or lower my my intention of I must get this person to choose me today. Instead, I must get this person to make decisions that improve their life.
It's such a paradox, isn't it? In order to get more sales, you have to lower the importance on sales. One of my favorite things in the 5-4-3, I don't know if I've ever told you this is one of my favorite things, but is that you don't tell people to close the sale, you tell them to resolve the sale. And it allows for more options. It allows us to go in, not with I win or I lose in here, is there's a lot of different outcomes in which I can win. And that's in helping people, whether it's buying with us, buying with somebody else, not doing anything, but I'm helping them come to that conclusion and resolving it versus like, I'm here to close the sale. Like this is all that I'm here to do. That's so narrowly focused. And of course, I mean, I love closing a sale. Like there's nothing more fun than that. And that there's not a better high than the high of sales and closing a deal. But I like the word resolve that you use too, because it just opens it up that there are other options and there's other ways to win.
That's great. And so for those who aren't familiar with the phrase you said, so you said the 5-4-3. So the 5-4-3 factor is our 12-step process. 5 + 4 + 3 is 12. So it's 5 steps to understand the customer's mission, to improve their life and solve their problems. And it's 4 steps to present solutions and 3 steps to resolve the sale. Just to make sure I clear that up for everyone who's new to us. So let's discuss this. I think we should unpack in this episode here is how does a brand new person, when they're making $2,000-$3,000 a month and maybe a draw or a salary, they obviously want to make $100,000, $200,000 a year, and they know that the fastest way to do that is to get people to buy something from them to close the deal. Yet the paradox is in order to make that shift, they need to lower the importance of closing the deal and instead raise their standard on how can I get this person to make decisions that will ultimately obviously end in them buying something from them. So what advice would you give a brand new salesperson that like needs to make that kind of money? They need to give them a pay raise, but they're in this kind of like stuck spot right now.
I think so much more of it is common sense than we give ourselves credit for. And sometimes we have to see this project or this goal that's way out there. And I think the first thing, and I like doing this in seminars with teams, is to say, what are all the decisions that a person has to make in order to go forward with you? And we've, talked in the past about different decisions or different things that people could purchase, but what are all the things that they have to decide on before the yes to the big one? The same way as an endurance athlete like you, Jason, when you were wanting to go and climb the elevation of Mount Everest, you didn't go out and try to climb the elevation of Mount Everest. Like went on a walk. There's steps along the way. And so just the same way is recognize that it's not closing a deal. It's not climbing Mount Everest, that there are steps that you have to take. Is that where you would start as well?
Yes. And yes, eventually we've got to shift their mindset because again, in order to be a top producer, in order to be the Tom Brady of sales, they have to think like the Tom Brady of sales. They have to speak like the Tom Brady of sales, and they have to do behaviors like the Tom Brady of sales. And that's very different than a brand new person that's just starting out. And it's very possible that some salespeople will never have that shift. I mean, that's a shift. That's like in the Matrix, like taking the red pill and completely seeing everything differently, because any salesperson for any bit of time has been told, probably by their bosses, their managers, like, you must sell more, you must bring another deal, you must close another home or remodeling project or software, whatever they're closing. So they're told to do this, but they're not told the paradox, which is what you said, which is, in order to actually close the deal, I need to not focus on closing a deal. I need to focus on helping customers make decisions that would logically and rationally into them buying something from us.
Well, do you remember that moment for you? Like, if you think back, do you remember when you lowered the importance, or can you think of a sale, maybe a sale where that is what, like, where you can even, maybe not in the middle of it, but afterwards we're like, oh, I did what I didn't put the pressure on myself and it came in.
I think when I shifted over, when I got into new home sales, so I was a stockbroker and then new home sales, and probably even when I was in high school and I was working in retail clothing, but definitely in home sales, I think the difference is that I probably, and this is maybe the epiphany here, is I really just enjoyed the process of helping people make decisions. Like, that was actually like fun for me. So I enjoyed the puzzle of the whole thing of, a customer trying to figure out, are they going to live in are they going to buy a house or not? And then, of course, it's like, okay, well, what do we need to decide in order to make that decision? Well, I need to decide if I can, what price range I should spend. I need to decide if I'm going to leave my current part of town. I'm going to decide if I'm going to own versus rent. I'm going to decide, do I even want to live in this part of town? What are the decisions that need to be made with that? It's do I like the commute? Do I like the local attractions like movie theaters and grocery stores I want to go to? Like, so all of these kind of decisions. And so for me, I'm not sure if I ever even maybe even had that issue, because for me, it was always fun in the sense of, this is a puzzle and let's just kind of break it down and figure out, like, what's the missing piece that needs to be kind of fulfilled next.
How wonderful that must be. Because I think for me, it's this cycle of going into extreme panic of, I don't know if I can make my sales. I mean, I even remember when we were first working together, 12, 13 years ago. And the moment, one of the big seminars that I was selling for you, selling seats, butts in seats, and thinking, what if I don't hit my goal? And for me, it's going into a panic. From the panic, once I get to a level of stress that is so high at that moment, having to surrender it, usually with, like, I don't know, sometimes it's tears, sometimes it's prayers, sometimes it's, I don't know, all of those, no sleeping, realizing, wait a second, like, this, the end of somebody saying yes or no is really not in my hands. It's really not. I don't think it's in any of our hands. We might debate that. You might think differently than me, but that ending moment, it's not in my hands. Now, it is in my hands that I can do things along the way. And for me, that's the moment when my stress level gets to a place where I can't eat, I can't sleep, I'm freaking out about sales. And then I have this, like, comes over me. It's happened so many different times. And I realize it's not my decision and it's not up to me. And I don't know what's going to happen. But here's what I can control today. I can control calling people. I can control how I show up. I can control the questions I ask. I can control the not yielding when somebody says I have to think about it. If somebody's mean to me, which Lord knows I've had my fair share of people yell at me on the phone, and when that happens, I can control how I think about myself. And if I respond back and say, yell back at them, or if somebody yells at me and I go, hey, I'm not a psychic, but it seems like you're having a really grumpy day. Like, sounds like things aren't working out for you today. Is this a bad time? Like, maybe you're not excited to talk to me. I can change that. And in that is where I felt freedom. And only then am I able to lower that belief system that I have to close because it's not on me. And I take back what is on me and start making those decisions accurately. But it's a cycle.
It is a cycle, and I didn't realize that I was actually doing that until probably coaching and training salespeople. That so I, again, yeah, maybe I was just fortunate that I kind of shifted the focus of that, and again, just made it a game of like, what is the current obstacle in the way that's keeping this person from making a decision to say yes to buy from me, and then figuring out, okay, well, the next obstacle in the way is again, they're not sure what options they want in their home. Okay, well, let's figure out the options they want in their home. What's the next obstacle in the way? Well, they're not sure if they which home site or which lot or which part in the community they wanted to be in. Okay, well, let's figure that out. So it's just kind of figuring out, like, what's the obstacle in the way? What's the missing piece?
So is that unique for each person that's in front of you? Because are their obstacles different, or is there a universal, this is the next obstacle somebody goes through?
I think there are. I think we could. I think there are definitely in, like, generic or general obstacles or decisions that every customer needs to make in order to make a decision. We talk about that in our Warrior Selling book and our training program. Um, but I do think it's unique to the company. So it's unique to the company, but also the person that's making those decisions, as far as what's the most downstream next decision that they need to make.
Yeah, so we have like a guideline. We have like a guideline path, but you might jump around a little bit depending on the human being in front of you. Would that be accurate?
Yeah. So, like, for example, and let's give a couple of scenarios, right? So let's say that let's say that, again, let's go back to the home building example. So a person's deciding if they're going to buy a house. Well, the first major decision obviously they have to make is are they going to leave what they have? Which we'll talk about, these major decisions people need to make, and kind of the chunk down decisions. But once they kind of make that kind of first decision, well, then it's like, okay, what about my time frame, and what about my budget, and what about, again, what part of town do I want to live in, location? What about, do I want a one-story or two-story? Do I want a big backyard, a small backyard? What kind of neighborhood do I want to be in? What kind of people do I want to surround myself with? I mean, so these are all these decisions that a person has to make. But yes, I think there's a little bit of a Tetris game, use that metaphor. There's a little bit of a Tetris game that goes on, of the person in front of me. What is, like, the next easiest decision that we can help them make that can really build momentum? So, for example, let's say I have two different customers, and one customer is deciding if they're going to buy a new home versus an older home. Well, so they need to decide that, but they also need to decide, like, what part of town they want to live in. So I have to be their advisor, and I have to figure out, okay, well, which decision is best for them to make right now, because they can't make both. And if I try to make both for them at the same time, it's going to create too much ambiguity, and too much decision fatigue, and too much overwhelmness. And so I got to figure out, of these two different decisions, which one is, like, the next move that I'm going to make in that Tetris match, in that Tetris game that I'm about to play.
Good. So how do you decide? How do you know how do you determine, right? Because, and I think that I ask this because I see so many salespeople, and the problem is not that they don't know enough, it's that they know too much. I know too many things that somebody has to determine. I know too much about my product that I want to, like, tell you everything about it. So I'm often seeing that it's not about learning more, it's about editing correctly. And so in this would be an edit of, I see there are two places that we need to go next, or we could go next. So what helps you determine the right next move?
So sometimes there's a lot of ways you can do this, but I'll give like maybe two. So one way is just ask the customer. So you actually give them choices, and you say, like in this case, hey, Mr. Customer, Mrs. Customer, there's several decisions we need to make. One of the first decision we need to make is you either need to make the decision of, do you want to go forward with a new home versus an older home, or the part of town that you want to live in, because right now you currently live in Plano, and you're thinking about living in Fort Worth or Keller or Benbrook, or Lido. There's lots of different towns that you could go to, and so what sounds more enjoyable for you? Does it sound more enjoyable to kind of narrow down the location first, or really talk about, does it make sense for you to buy a new home and the benefits and pros and cons of that, or an older home and the pros and cons of that?
Okay, that's really great because you're in control of it and you know that you're taking a next right step, but it's also including them in the decision. And I kind of smirked when you said that because that was not what I was thinking at all. Like, oh yeah, of course, novel idea. Ask them what they want to do next, but that's perfect. I like that a lot.
Well, it makes it's like, again, because the idea is like, what's more fun for you right now? What's more enjoyable for you now? What are you motivated to do right now? Like,
Spending money should be fun.
Spending money should be a lot of fun. I think people work way too hard to make money, and they should never, ever, ever have to work hard to spend money.
Yeah,
So,
I know you enjoy spending money. You're very good at it. You have a lot of fun with it.
but I don't like when salespeople make it not fun to spend money. I don't
Right.
like it when that happens a lot. I
Don't
like
be a fun killer.
Don't like that.
Good.
So I think one way is that. I think one way is including the customer and asking them, like, what are they more motivated to spend time on? What's more fun for them? So, and this leads me to a really, really important point that I've been talking about a lot with sales teams recently. And this is an entirely different episode that we should be filming. And that's, you need to watch the motivation of your customer or your prospect, and you need to be careful because they come in with so much units of motivation, and we need them to have enough units of motivation to make it to the end. And so they have so much endurance that they're starting off with. And so every time that we're making them make decisions that's not fun, or it's stressful, or it's not an easy next thing for them to make, we're taking a withdrawal out of their bank account.
Mm-hmm.
So if you take too many withdrawals out, then the customer just says, this is too much, I'm overwhelmed, or they won't tell you that at all. They'll just say, I need to think about it, or I need to go sleep on it, or these are the kind of things that people say. The salesperson doesn't know what just happened, and it's really just because they burned them out. They just burned the customer out by making the customer just do too much work to buy something. And you've experienced that just in the simple term of going to a clothing store, right? And we go to high-end clothing stores, and you're in the fitting room and you're just not having a good shopping day, and you just walk out of the fitting room and you're like, that's it, I'm done. Like, I'm done.
I'm complete.
That's your phrase. You'll say, I'm complete, right? And why do you say that? Why do you say that? Why do you say you're complete?
Because it's a polite way to say, nobody make me do anything or ask me any more questions. Like, it's over.
And you haven't enjoyed.
Yeah, it
money.
wasn't fun, right?
Yeah.
I'm complete because my funness has been drained. It's over. And
yeah, so you went into that clothing store saying, I want to buy something to make myself, feel good, or to something, right? You had a goal. You were motivated to do it, and you came in with, you came in with like 10 kind of units of motivation, like 10 kind of coins in your bank account. And because the salesperson kept taking all of those coins because you were doing it yourself, you weren't having fun, you weren't finding
carrying
things that you
clothes.
liked, you're carrying your own clothes, like you're just constantly taking those coins out of that bank account. And then you get to a point where you're like, you haven't had any deposits. So you haven't bought anything that you've enjoyed. You haven't picked something out. You haven't enjoyed the experience. And so nothing was being added back in. And so you get to a point where like, I just burn out. I can't do this anymore. I got to go.
Okay, so let's look at that again as far as the decision. So if we know, I'm going to go to the easiest option here of probably the most draining of the decisions is going to be financial. I would assume. Is that fair to say?
Yes, I think it's definitely, yeah.
One of the more
Sure.
Generally, if I'm making a very large high-end purchase, financial. So if I am able as a sales professional to then get somebody to make financial decisions, have a financial conversation, then probably I want to go from that to making sure that I'm making a deposit and they're getting to do something that's more enjoyable and fun after that. That should be my philosophy in looking at it. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I like that. Well, and you're also bringing up a really good point of thinking about what are those decisions that I need the most kind of units of motivation from my customer, and I need to strategically place those. So for example, like I'm a huge proponent of talking about resolving the financial decision as early as possible, But most salespeople, they wait till the very end to resolve the financial decision, and the person's just worn out. So like again, like going back, they start off with 10 units of motivation. Well, they might need 3 or 4 just to handle the financial decision, just to feel safe and to feel secure. They feel like this is a good use of their budget and their money at this time. They can afford it. They're not going to feel anxious of spending the money. That might take 3 or 4 units of motivation. So if you're now waiting for that financial decision at the end, and they got 1 unit of motivation left, like they can't do it. Like it's they procrastinate. It feels horrible, and to make it even more dramatized here, now they're anchoring you to making them feel bad, because you're now talking to them. You're seriously right, because you're talking to them about deciding if they can afford this when they're just exhausted.
And then you get ghosted, and then you wonder why you got ghosted.
Because they've literally anchored you as like you're the destroyers of hopes and dreams
and energy.
And destroyers of energy, and you're like an energy vampire, and it's not good.
Okay, so I'm remembering when you said we're going to start playing a new sales game, and we would have our sales calls would be 50-minute calls. To block the hour, that we had the 10-minute buffer gap there. And I remember when you came and you're like, okay, we're doing something new. Like the game is you have to get to a contract and pricing in 20 minutes. You have 20 minutes to get there, instead of, because what we were noticing is you do all of your discovery and you present and you're doing all of these things, and then that are good. They're not that you don't want to do them. And then we would get to the contract and pricing at 45, 50 minutes into the call, which one leaves you very little time to talk about and handle objections around pricing, but also they're tired by then. They're so tired. And so I remember like what a huge jump we saw in conversion rate when we went to talking about price in the first 20 minutes. And this is reminding me of that philosophy and where that came from.
Yeah. So the reason for that, which is a cool concept that we teach in Warrior Selling, and it's definitely grounded in neuro-linguistic programming, which we're both big practitioners in, and is this idea that the sooner I can bring it up, the sooner I can value stack it. So the sooner I can bring it up. So let's say now I'm in in-home services, and I'm selling a remodeling, or I'm selling a pool, or I'm selling a new landscaping package, whatever it is.
Okay.
Well, the faster I can bring this up to you, and so for what you're looking for, Mary, you're probably in a range of somewhere between $75,000 to $100,000 for what you're asking for. So the faster I can bring that up, the faster I can get your emotional response. So then immediately, so I'm saying, so how would you feel about that? Suppose we're able to get you the pool that you're looking for, the backyard landscaping, the oasis that you're wanting to accomplish. We're going to stop doing this. We're going to start doing this. We're going to have it done by Christmas so that you can, do blank, blank, blank. So how would you feel about paying 75 to 100 grand for something like that? And so immediately you're going to give me several responses, right? You're going to say, yeah, that seems about right. It might be a little bit higher than I was wanting. Mm-hmm. Or you're going to say, hell no, would I ever pay that? I thought it was going to cost 40,000. I mean, whatever. So you're just going to give me your response. And that's super helpful because now because to your point, now I can spend the next, 45 minutes value stacking it. Now I can start explaining and showing you all the things that you're going to be receiving for, the extra $50,000 that you thought it was going to cost, right? So you thought it was going to cost 30. It's really going to cost whatever 80. And now I can spend the rest of the time, shrinking that gap and showing you why that's the case.
I love that. So I get to understand it more deeply, and it's giving me time to now, again, edit correctly, because I'm showing you the things of why it costs this much, everything that we're going to do, instead of sharing with you things that maybe weren't as important to you or that weren't going to demonstrate the value of what you were going to be paying for.
That's right. Yeah. And so that leads us to another way that people can decide, the salesperson can decide which decisions they need to accomplish next, because once you kind of understand the rules of the game. So if I'm working with you and you now tell me you thought it was, you expected to pay 30 and it's really going to cost somewhere between, 70 to 100. And so in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, well, let's kind of strive for 80 then. So I now need to come up with a path of how can I get you to make decisions that you see are in agreement to paying the extra $50,000 more than what you expected to pay. And then I got to figure that out. I got to figure out what were you expecting to get with 30, and then I have to ask questions to figure out, if you were to pay 80, then what would it have to look like? What would you have to see? What would you have to feel? What would it have to do for you? So I would have to help you understand that.
Yeah.
And then we'd have to come up with some decisions that we're going to make along the way that would build that. Like, for example, if I am doing that pool and that backyard landscaping, it's what are those kind of amenities that you're looking for? What size pool are you wanting? What are you wanting fire around it? Are you not wanting fire? What are these things that you're wanting to see? Are you wanting a diving board, a slide, right? These are stuff.
You're going to all these dangerous things. I'm like, a fence. I need a fence. I need safety around it. And you're adding fire and slides.
Yeah, so I do that. So once you're helping make those decisions, then we can kind of together kind of figure out, well, this is why it just cost what it cost. It does. This is what it cost, which we can talk about in other episodes as well. So again, in order to help people make these decisions, which is important, again, step one strategy is to collaborate with them and give them those choices like we talked about. And then the next is really just through your experience. It's you trying to figure out what's, if I need to shrink the gap when it comes to getting them to spend an extra $50,000 for this, then what's like the next logical decision that I would need them to make in order to see the value in that. Like, so for example, is it just amenities, or is it the decision of getting them to decide that they're not going to do it themselves?
Oh, I like that one.
Right? Or getting them to decide that they're not going to use like chuck in a truck. They're not going to use just like their, the guy that mows their lawn, but also does side projects and said that, yeah, they would dig a hole and create a pool for them. Right? Which is 100% going to be less money, and is going to be closer to that $30,000 they had in mind. Right? So it's helping them kind of, okay, what are those decisions they need to make that would help shrink that gap and get them to agree that in order to get what they want, they're going to have to pay $50,000 more than they expected to pay.
Okay, so one of the decisions, kind of a universal decision, is that this is something that is beyond my own capabilities, and I need to outsource this to a professional. And then second is that level of professionalism would be another kind of sub decision of that one, or maybe just another decision in itself.
And that's both on the B2C, like business to consumer side. That's also on the B2B side.
Correct. I can remember my own CRM system that I created with a Google Maps and some and my own little notes in there. I didn't know CRMs existed, so I created one, and then later was like, "What? This is real?"
That's right. So I mean, you could look at it from a person deciding are they gonna use an outsourced chief financial officer. So they're a lot of small businesses, they have to make the decision of, am I going to continue being my own chief financial officer, as the owner of a company, or am I going to, then outsource it to someone else? And then once they decide to outsource it, then they have to decide, if
it's fractional or full-time employee, or if it is an employee, are they the CFO / the Slashy award of all these other things that the person's going to do as well?
And then they have to decide if it's going to be fractional, then to what level of a company are they going to use? Just like the whole chuck in a truck versus a national provider. So, because there could be just a one man or one woman, fractional CFO type business, or it could be like an entire company that has different fractional help. And what are the pros and cons of that? Because obviously, the bigger the company, the more they're going to charge.
Well, and the same with that too. I would think there's the difference between the bookkeeper and the controller and the CFO. Same as with your pool example. If we're dragging in an above ground pool, or we're doing crazy like masonry work, would take a different level of professional to do it. So what level of professional do I need? Okay, I like this. So those are so one, I think as a lot of times as a salesperson is we think things are too obvious. Like obviously someone's going to have a professional do it, or it's obvious why they should use me versus my size company versus somebody else. But realizing that to the layperson and to the buyer, it's not obvious. I think that probably goes across most things. Is what's obvious to one is not obvious to others. Otherwise, everybody would just choose that. There wouldn't be other options as well.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So it's figuring out, and that's why it goes back to like what's the most downstream decision that the customer needs to make right now. But to your point, the salesperson themselves, they 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 could have an entirely different path to buy something that the customer has. And the reason why I say that is because they have information that has already somewhat made decisions. Like, for example, let's say the salesperson themselves just happens to work for a national provider of the same service than more of a mom and pop provider. Okay, well, they're going to obviously have a bias that it's obvious that someone wants a national provider, and so they're going to have a bias towards that. And so they're just going to assume that's the case. Or let's say you're in the real estate world and you happen to be selling for a home builder that is in an A+ school system, and in your mind it's obvious that people would want to live in your neighborhood because of this A+ elementary school. But that might not be the buying criteria of the buyer that they're referring to. That might not be as important to them as far as like the next decision they need to make. That is the decision they need to make is do they value the location enough to get that kind of school system, or are they going to send their kids to private school and have to adjust the finances? So these are all decisions, but we have to be careful that just because we see the value in something doesn't mean the person in front of us is going to see that value.
Great. Okay, so some of the decisions that you've talked about so far are knowing that I don't like what I'm currently doing, or the system process within my business, or my lack of pool in the backyard, whatever, that's not working for me anymore. So that's one of the decisions. The second is the decision of I'm not going to do this myself. The decision of what kind of provider I want to use is a decision our customers need to make.
Like what level?
What level?
Mm-hmm.
And what's another main decision that you think is a lot of different companies or companies' customers are having to make in order to move forward with them?
So I think there's several. So there's this decision of the economy. I mean, right now we're going into election season, and the election's just right around the corner, and so there is just that overall kind of how is this decision going to be impacted based upon the economy that we're in, the stock market, the interest rates, the who's going to be the president of the United States, all these things. So I think do I feel safe to buy right now from an economic perspective? We obviously talked about the financial decision.
Mm-hmm.
How is this going to impact me personally? So economic climate is more, do I feel like it's a good decision in light of what's going on in the world and the economy, versus the financial decision is how is it going to impact me personally?
Well, I think it's something that's interesting. I think a lot of times customers will say, I'm not sure if it's the right time to buy. And what I've seen with salespeople is they'll think that that's something personally, like maybe they're saying time because it's financial, or time because I don't know if something in that person's life, when really what they're saying is, I don't know if it's the right time to buy economically. And so being comfortable talking about what's happening in the economy and talking about how that will or will not affect their purchase is a big one. But I think it comes in code words sometimes with time.
It does. And so that's actually a really good question to frame back to them. So if they were to say, I'm not sure it's the right time to buy, then I think you would just ask that question. You would say, well, what's your criteria to determine when is the right time to buy for you? And I think if you just asked it like that, then they would immediately tell you the first thing that comes to mind, and it would say something to do with their job security, or something to do with the economy, or something to do with the interest rates, or something to do with just, is it the right, they've got the holidays coming up and they want to spend money, on this, or other decisions they're trying to make. So I mean, they're going to tell you. I mean, they'll just tell you by asking them back that question.
Yeah, or the status of their company. We're getting ready to start our new fiscal year, or it's budgeting season, which says, hey, that time is a financial decision here versus something else. Or no, we're waiting. We think somebody might get bought out, and we need to know how that's going to affect us right now in the time.
Well, and to your point of they're going to actually, because they're going to tell you too about how is it going to affect their own personal time. So, because like from a business perspective, we're called on a lot in our company, and if I was to say to someone, I'm just not sure this is the right time. I mean, one of my answers would be the financial and the economic, but another one of my answers would be, this is going to require my personal time. I'm going to have to put time into this in order to get this project off the ground, or one of my employees or one of our employees have to do this. And so, do they have the time to actually do this? So
that's great.
It's not just buying it.
And that's clear for business to business, but also business to consumer.
Sure.
Because if I think I have to manage my own landscaping project, or I have to manage the pool project myself, then that's something else for the salesperson to let me know about the project management and how they're handling it. And hey, Mary, this is how much time it will take from you, versus we've got this. Like, it doesn't, the time, if the time's a thing, that's actually not an issue at all, because I'm going to manage this for you. I've got you in this, and you don't have to worry about it.
That's exactly right. Yeah. So, but I don't think a lot of salespeople are they don't remember that. They don't pay attention to being clear with a person on, here is how much time is going to be required of you in order to do this. And again, if you're charging more than your competition, part of that charging more is that you're removing the time constraint from the customer. So, for example, like a mom and pop chuck in a truck option will require a lot more time from the consumer who's purchasing it, from the business or from the individual consumer. Versus if you're paying more for something and you're hiring a company that has more resources, then the expectation would be is that because I'm paying more, you're going to handle more of it, and I'm going to handle less of it. But that's not clearly explained well enough in most cases.
Yeah, and it's definitely one of the reasons the price is more, and I think that's a huge thing. I think a great question that we can ask people is, how much time are you wanting to devote to this project? Whether that's to a business owner or to a homeowner, how much time are you wanting to give to this? And especially if you're working for a bigger company, because then they say, well, not very much. I have this much time. You're like, great. Like, here's a great option for you. Here's the way to go. Now, and I think if we can always look at how to make it easy for people. So you say many, many times for forever that the number one rule of selling is to make it easy for people to buy. But I think it's also is make it easy for them to continue buying, or make it easy for them to be a customer, as opposed to, oh yeah, it's super easy to buy, but now as a customer, I'm going to require so much work from you and so much time from you and answers from you so quickly. So keep the easy going.
Yes, we need to keep the easy going. But in a way to keep the easy going is by chunking down those decisions as much as possible, as making all those decisions as kind of micro as possible. So, so again, let's go to the idea of you are, just give me something to sell. What's a concept that we can.
Something that you want to sell?
Stop about the Army.
Right? Okay, great.
So we did a lot of work with the Army. We had great success. They have their salespeople, right? They've got these recruiters that are there to take a high school kid through a process of deciding if they're going to serve this great country and be a soldier, which is awesome. It's a great job. And so we had to take them through a process of what are those decisions that a person needs to make. And, obviously the first decision is are you happy with your current life track? Like, that was a decision. So it wasn't, and the mistake the Army was making when we first took over is they went in, guns blazing, no pun intended, to this, let me tell you why you should join the Army. Like that was like, tell me why you join the Army. Here's all the benefits of the Army. Here's how great the Army is. But they were just missing the mark because that wasn't the decision that the high school kid wanted to make right now. The high school kid was not ready to make the decision of, am I ready to join the Army? The high school kid needed to make the first decision, which is like, am I happy with my current life path? Am I happy with, because right now I'm about to graduate high school, and then like, what am I going to do next? And if they're happy with what they're going to do next, then probably the Army is not right for them. But if they're unhappy with what they're going to do next, then the Army is one of the options that they can make. Still not the option they can make, but it's one of the options. And so I think, so I know a big kind of next step for every salesperson listening right now is they need to make a list of all of the decisions that their customers need to make in order to feel the overall peace and freedom and resolution of making the biggest decision of, am I going forward with this purchase or not? Am I choosing this person or not?
I love it. Well, and it's a slow down to speed up mentality because what we saw there, and it's been the same in every industry we've jumped into, is loving the boldness of, are you ready to sign up today? Sign the contract today. And the people that do that, I love. I mean, that's great. I love that energy and the boldness of it. But wait and go, wait, we got to slow down because there's other things they have to do to get there. Again, the paradox. Slow down to speed up. Another paradox here.
That's it. So for some like very practical things that a person could do, you know what you should do, and to kind of wrap this whole thing up because we can spend so much time on this one concept. Why don't we do this? Let's go back and forth, and I'll ask you the same question that you'll ask me,
Okay.
and that's tell me one thing that a salesperson needs to do in order to help a customer to decide.
Say the question again for
So the
me.
question is, tell me one thing that a person needs to think about, to believe, to do in order to help a customer to decide.
Okay. Was that you asking me at that time?
Ask it again.
Okay.
Tell
Ask
me
it one more
one
time.
thing that a person needs to do to help a customer to decide.
They need to understand the current situation that customer is in.
Thank you.
Jason, tell me one thing that a salesperson needs to do to help a customer to decide.
They need to go in already with an exhaustive list of all of the decisions that their average customer needs to make in order to feel good about the overall decision, and use that as like a checkoff list of these are the decisions that I need to help them make in order to make the overall decision.
Great.
So tell me something that a salesperson needs to do to help their customers to decide.
They need to know their industry and they need to know their competition and be able to speak to the pros and cons of all the decisions that their customer can make.
I like that.
Thank you. All right, Jason, tell me something that a salesperson needs to do in order to help their customer to decide.
They need to have just an overall obsession. I like that word, obsession. They need to be focused, be extremely focused on did I achieve resolution with this person, and specifically in this decision that they're struggling with, whatever that decision is, and if they could focus on did I truly achieve resolution with this one decision, then they can use that as, okay, now I've closed the door and now I can open another door for them. Because what I don't want them to do is open up too many doors or have too many loose ends or open loops that causes the customer to have tremendous ambiguity, decision fatigue, wears them out. I don't want that to happen.
Thank you.
So tell me something that a salesperson needs to decide to do to help their customers to decide.
So they need to ask the tough things and talk about finances early on so that they can value stack and they can make sure that their customer has the motivation and energy units to talk about the hard things.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay. So tell me something that a salesperson needs to do in order to help their customer to decide.
I think along that line of energy units, just a big reminder everyone needs to pay attention to, and that's am I wearing my prospects out? So am I wearing them out? Are they not having fun buying from me anymore? Are they not having fun with these decisions? And they need to be very, very mindful of that and very aware of that, and find ways to help the customer, win. And so it might be a a silly decision or a decision that's really not that important, but if a customer can make a decision that's very easy for them to make, it's putting a deposit back in that bank account, and it's kind of refueling them now to go handle maybe a bigger decision.
I love it. Thank you.
All right, final one. So
Okay.
tell me something that a salesperson can do to help their customers to decide.
They can stay present with them. Stay with them in the decision, not rush it, facilitate the conversation, and with that, not make assumptions to what their answers will be or to what's obvious and not obvious. So just really staying in the space with your customer, staying present with them, and going at their pace.
That's great. Okay. All right. So I think we covered a lot today. The biggest thing I hope everyone got out of this today is they want to give themselves, they want to make more money, they want to sell more, whatever they're selling, then obviously they have to close deals. But the paradox of closing deals is to stop focusing on closing deals and to start focusing on helping people decide. And if they can focus on that, then sure. Are there going to be some instances where they help them to decide to not do something? Sure. Are they going to help them decide to buy from someone else besides them? Sure. But if they are in the ones that are, if that salesperson is in control of helping a person to decide, then of course more sales are going to come their way than from anyone else. And at the same time, they can feel really good about it. It can be a very, very positive experience for both the customer and the salesperson.